Hello and welcome to this video on IGCSE Marine Science, where we'll be going over section 3.4 and we're going over the vertebrates in detail. Everything here is from the Cambridge Marine Science textbook for IGCSE, and any errors here are mine and mine alone, and the video are made for my class. But if anyone else can use it, it's free to use. I don't make any money on this. So let's get rolling. So the big divider in the animal kingdom is with or without the backbone. And with backbone, it's called a vertebrate, or without the backbone, it's called an invertebrate. In general, vertebrates are the bigger animals, the stuff we see on Discovery and National Geographics. There are, of course, exceptions. We can have quite small fish, and we can have huge invertebrates like giant squid and giant clams. Invertebrates go all the way from tiny zooplankton all the way up to giant squids. So we have many different sizes here. But we will start in this video to look at the vertebrates, which are the animals with a backbone. And we will look at the mammals, birds, reptile, and fish, both the bony fish and the cartilage fish. But sadly, Cambridge have chosen not to include the jawless fish and the amphibians. The amphibians make sense from a marine perspective, but the jawless fish, well, we kind of miss them. So anyone who's fans of jawless fish, go find information somewhere else. So all mammals have, to some degree, fur or hair on the skin. It can be quite hard to see in some versions. For example, whales and dolphins, they lack hair on most of the body, while a sea otter or a polar bear, you can very clearly see a lot of the hair. Also, all mammals, they reproduce by internal fertilization, which means the offspring grows inside the mother, and then she's born. Most of them, in the mammals, you always also see that the mother takes a lot of care of the offspring compared to some of the other animals we'll look at later. And all mammals have lungs, and they breathe oxygen and use that for respiration, and they also get rid of carbon dioxide over the lungs. So marine mammals, we will of course often think about the whales, which are the biggest ones. The blue whale, of course, being the biggest living organism on the planet now. But it's also orcas, it's seals, it's different kind of sea cows, manatees, and also animals who are both a little terrestrial and a little marine, polar bears being one of them. Marine birds, like the mammals, breathe air. They have lungs, and so they breathe in oxygen over the lungs and release CO2 over the lungs. They have a skin cover, but unlike mammals, where it's hair, here it's feathers. Feathers are like fur made of keratin. They also have internal fertilization, the same as mammals, but they lay eggs instead, and then one of the parents will nest the egg until the egg can hatch. Marine birds there are many species of them. Some are more like shorebirds, while others, like the penguins, are very well adapted to swimming and actually function better swimming than they do on land. Some, like the albatross, for example, spends a lot of time over the ocean, flying and hovering over the ocean. And others, like the pelican, are just specifically designed to be able to hunt for fish on the ocean. So we see many different kind of adaptation to marine life in birds. But when it comes to diving birds, the penguins are, of course, the kings. So marine reptiles are an interesting group because reptiles are on land some of the animals who are best adapted to living in dry conditions. In deserts, you'll find lizards and snakes who are very well adapted to living without water. But there are also reptiles who are adapted to living either sometimes in water or actually all of the time in water. Skin of reptiles is covered by scales, and they also breed internally, like the birds do, and they lay hard shell eggs, but a little softer in the shell than we find in most birds. Gas exchange is also by lungs, so the gas exchange system is a lot like what we see in birds. So there are the main species of marine reptiles are sea turtles, which live their entire life out in the ocean. Only the females come back to the coast when they need to lay their eggs on the offspring. But we also find crocodiles, we find sea snakes, and on the Galapagos Island we find the marine iguanas. So there are other animals from the reptile group who live in the ocean. But the sea turtles are the most important group and also a group we'll focus a lot on in this syllabus. So there are many marine species of fish. We also find many who adapt to aquatic life in freshwater, but we will focus on the marine fishes. And we have two main groups, those whose skeletons are made of cartilage, which are the sharks, the rays, and then we have the bony fishes, which are your tunas and your trouts and all the other fish we normally see. Fish are uniquely adapted to living in the water. Of course, there are a few fish who can shortly go outside of water, eels and lungfish and so on, but both in body shape and in movement and in the ability to breathe underwater with gills, they are highly adapted to an aquatic life. Most marine fish are covered with scales. You see that. It's a little different with sharks, they have a different kind of skin that rest for a while. And fish reproduction almost always have external fertilization. There are some sharks who don't. The fertilized eggs hatch in the water, and you don't really see any care given to the offspring. Normally, seahorses are, of course, here an exception. Important, really important structure is, of course, the gills, and the gills give fish the ability to exchange both CO2 and O2 right over the gill surface. So when the water runs over the gill surface, the fish can take up O2 and release CO2. So it's a very different structure than the lungs we'll see in the reptiles and the birds and the mammals. This is a system uniquely designed for living underwater. Here we see some different examples of the cartilaginous fish, the rays and the sharks. In general, they are active predators, and they don't have gill covers. They have gill slits. There are many different shapes, from the different sharks who are really built for speed to the rays and the chimeras. And here we see some of the examples of the different type of bony fish. Some of them, like the sturgeon, has a more armored look, while others only have the classical scales we often see. But we have the same body shape, built for swimming, and later on we'll talk about the function of the different fins. So here we see a basic layout of a fish, and I know it looks a little confused, but we can still make this work. Fish, like all organisms, have many adaptations for survival. Some adaptations are only found in a few of them, but here we'll look at those we'll see in most of the fish. First, we'll see the upper column, which is the gill cover, which is a structure that covers the gill. It has a protective function. It also acts as a valve to prevent water flowing backwards over the gill. And we don't see this in the shark and the rays. We only see this in the bony fish. We also see that we have the different fins. The different fins are used for propulsion, and they're also used for control in the water. And we will go over the function of the different fins later on. The lateral line is a sensory organ that runs down the length of the fish. It can detect vibrations in the water so the fish can sense danger, or if it's a prey and needs to escape a predator, or it can sense movement in food if it's a predator and needs to find its prey. And here we see a basic structure of a shark. The big difference is that we here have the gill opening. We also have a very well defined nostril and snout. Beside that, we have the same layout with the different fins. Again, this shark here is one of the fast moving sharks, so the caudal fin is designed for that. But beside that, it is pretty much the same design as we find in the bony fishes. Each type of fin has a function in controlling movement of the fish. Different fins control roll, pitch, and yaw, and provide thrust in the water. And we have a little look at the different movements here. Roll is a spinning, turning movement of a fish around its central axis, and it's mainly controlled by the dorsal fin and the anal fin. Pitch is a movement of the fish's head up and down in the water. A fish will move its head up and down depending on whether it wants to swing upwards and downwards or maybe avoid predation. Pitch is controlled by the pectoral fins and the pelvic fins. Yaw is sideways movement in the water from left to right. It is controlled by the pectoral fins and the pelvic fins. And thrust is a force that pushes a fish forward in the water. The caudal fin provides thrust. The pectoral fins are used to brake to slow the fish if it's going too fast. Many of these controls here are exactly the same you'll find on a fighter jet or fighter plane, and we have the same name for it. Just a little recap of the function of the different fins and the names. Again, this is a new part of the syllabus, so I do think that Cambridge will ask about this in the exam. So just a piece of advice: learn the different names of the fins and learn their function.